Hello and welcome back to another episode of Loud and Proud Orlando. Today we've got a special bonus episode for you. We're going to do a review of the East. I've got special guests here from the Designated Players podcast, Andrew. Welcome, Andrew. How are you?
Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for having me. Really happy to be here. And that intro was awesome. I'm moving around already, ready to go.
Yeah, Luis did an incredible job. We did a bit of a rebrand. I know you guys did a rebrand also this year. So Luis made us a great new intro, which is super cool. So Luis, how you doing, buddy?
No, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for Andrew for being here, and to you, John, and everybody watching. Thank you so much for your support. Exciting new things happening for the Lions. New unveiling of the new kit that we yearn and ask for, a legacy kid that embraces USL history, and we finally got it. I'm just super stoked of seeing all the pictures. Aside of that, ready to talk some MLS. Thank you, John.
Yeah, I got my Honor Thy History scarf up on the wall
Yeah,
already. I got my
no, that's
hat on.
beautiful.
Look at this.
Yeah.
It's a thing of beauty, I gotta say. I could talk all day about that jersey, but that's not what we're here to do.
Exactly, yeah.
One of the things that Andrew, earlier in the year, I went on Andrew's show because he's been doing a deep dive, or not so deep dive as you guys call it, of every team in MLS. So Andrew has been recording an episode with podcasters like ourselves from every single club in MLS.
Fantastic.
We were lucky enough to go on and represent Orlando. So I've been listening to all of those, but because of that, I'm sure you can tell yourself, he's got an incredible knowledge right now of every team in the league and what they're doing. But today we're really just going to focus on the Eastern teams, the one that we care about. So we're going to kind of throw some questions to Andrew. Luis is going to answer. I'm going to answer too. Basically just around the East and give you a little bit of summary. We're not going to go team by team. We don't have time to do that. Only Andrew has time to do that, apparently. But we're going to get some idea about who to look out for, what to expect in this bloodbath. Andrew and his co-host Connor have termed, I love this term, bloodbath of the East. So do you think that's what's going to be, Andrew, a bloodbath?
That's spot on. That is the phrase coined by Connor, who I will try and rep as much as I can while he's not here. But it's a perfect way to describe it. I think we talked about it and we realistically looked at it, and there are 6, 7, maybe 8 teams who are fighting for the top 3 or 4 spots that realistically could finish there. So it is going to be, to the bottom. The last day is going to be a fight for those top 4, I think.
So that leads us off into our first question. With everything happening in the MLS and on the Eastern side, there's been a lot of big transfers this offseason. I've been trying to keep up with all of them, but mainly focused on the Duncan McGuire saga that distracted me. So thankfully, Andrew's here to tell us. First question, Andrew. What is the best transfer in this season? And by that, I mean, which MLS East club has brought in the best player, and who is it this offseason?
Oh man, it's super interesting, right? Because when you think about these big moves, a lot of them actually took place in the other conference in the West. I mean, you're looking at guys like Gabriel Peck, Petar Musa, these big name attackers that are coming into the league, and they're usually on the other side of the country. But in the East, you can highlight a couple of them. Hugo Kuiper is coming in to Chicago to be striker number 2 behind Tom Barlow, Red Bull born and raised. I'm just kidding, everybody. But there are also guys like Emil Forsberg into my club at Red Bull who are giving us something that we haven't seen since Henry. You've got guys who are a little bit less flashy, but are going to complete teams like Bartosz Sliles in Atlanta, or even David Bricalo over here in Orlando that kind of closes up holes that the team needed coming in. But the big one for me that I think is going to get more attention, or not get as much attention, but it probably should, is going to be Yankov, the new attacking mid number 10 in Montreal. Montreal struggled so poorly last season for chance creation. You talk about the difference between having and losing Djordje Mihailovic over the one season to the next. I mean, it was night and day. So to bring in somebody in that number 10 role who's going to be able to unlock so many new options for them, with Josef Martinez up top, with Kokoro up top, with Opoku maybe playing out wide, depending on what sort of shape they play in. Having that number 10 to really just pull the strings and set the tempo and really, really dictate the play, I think is going to be massive for them. It might be the biggest addition, not in terms of like what his individual numbers are going to be, but the difference it makes in the team.
Interesting. Your first two I definitely had on my list, but that third one, I think you're like you said, instrumental for what Montreal desperately needs. Right, it's a attacking playmaker for them. Luis, for you, who's the best transfer in the East?
Luis Muriel. No,
You can't just add Orlando,
well, I
although
mean,
he
it
is
could
up there. I
be.
think he's up there,
It
arguably.
could be. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't consider it to be a best transfer, but I think that East teams need to watch out if Lucho Acosta and Boop in Cincinnati click. I think that's gonna, them
I mean, he was there
leaving.
before, but he kind of
Right,
feels
he
a
had
bit
some
like a new
issues.
signing,
Right, he
Bopenza.
has some
Yeah.
issues with leaving a little late from Gabon, which is his nature, his home country. But I think if we start seeing that attacking third of Cincinnati picking up, and also Barrial, I think, also stepping out. But I think with them too, I think we're looking at a pretty big tandem there. Obviously, Orlando has had a lot of good additions, like Andrew said, like Bracalo and Muriel. But we'll see. Also, I'm wondering, how deep is, I mean, a lot of people maybe are gonna kill me about it, but also Luis Suarez, right? I mean, you never know, right? Luis Suarez.
You can't be
You
picking
know,
him.
I mean, they cannot pay him, but here it is. We'll see what happens with
As
that
long
too.
as he
So,
gets enough injections in his knees, he'll be fine. Honestly, I'm gonna go Emil Forsberg. I think that's a
yeah,
massive pickup by you guys.
yeah, it's a huge pickup.
I think he's like could still like do bits in Bundesliga, like up there, kind of like would score still 15 goals, like 10, 15 goals in Bundesliga at this age. So I think if you bring a guy similar to Luis Muriel, but younger still, right? So has more. So respect to you guys for that. Finally using that Red Bull connections of yours. So I'm sure you're happy about that one, Andrew.
Yeah, a little, definitely happy with the quality he brings. I mean, again, preseason is preseason, but he brought such a level to preseason we haven't seen in years, really, at Red Bull camp. The worry is that he's not going to have one like last year. He's not going to have the players around him because we're relying very heavily on players coming back from injury. So Dante Van Zier, Lewis Morgan, and even Sergin Goma to a degree, where they were our big three last year. Maybe Ngoma as a substitute player that all got hurt, and the next guy up, it didn't matter who you put around him. They couldn't score. They couldn't do the job, right? So excited Emil in a team that has the starting 11 quality that I think we should have, but relying on those players as difference makers in a team where they were so injured last year. I'm cautiously optimistic because I don't want to get my hopes up just for this season to repeat.
Oh, we don't want you getting your hopes up at all. We like Red Bull not being around. That's good with us. You guys can stay down fighting for playoffs. All right, next question. Biggest loss to a team. So this one, in the East, which player was gone from a team and we feel like they're gonna miss that the most? Like whose loss will be the biggest impact, I guess is the question we're asking here. Luis, I'm gonna go to you first this time.
I mean, definitely Barrial in Cincinnati. That's a huge one. I think a big part of their piece of their puzzle there. You're talking about, I was gonna say Duncan McGuire, right? But that didn't play out the way it should have been. He's back. But Nashville also going through some transitions. Fafa Picault leaving. He was pretty big in their championship. And I just feel like the East is so strong right now. It's really gonna be up for grabs. I was very happy also with the I'm wondering how New York City FC is going to look like also, with the arrival of that kid from Argentina, 19-year-old Agustin Ojeda. He was fantastic in the under 20s too. So I just feel like I would say Cincy, because you have, I don't know if they'll win Supporter Shield this year, but I mean they're definitely going to try. But I think losing Brandon Vasquez to Mexico and Barreal, that's going to be pretty big.
Andrew, do you have any of those guys on your top of biggest loss?
Yeah, so I had Brandon Vasquez was one of them on my kind of short list when I was first thinking about this. But when when the description was who we miss most by their club, my first thought was who hasn't been really replaced yet. And I think Boop is still in there to do all right. Barreal, to my knowledge, is still kind of in limbo. Like he may be back, but he was on my list at first as well. And because he hasn't been officially, at least to my research of a day or two ago when we did FCC, that he's still technically around, and I think he was in camp recently. So I took him off my list because he was actually the first person I thought of as well. Miles Robinson was another name in Atlanta that kind of popped up, but we might see Gregerson step in and replace him. All right. So my final two in that list ended up being Karol Swiderski was my number 2 in that list. A guy who single-handedly dragged Charlotte to the playoff or the play-in game last season. I mean, I think he went on a run of 6 or 7 games and ended up scoring like 4 or 5 big goals in those games to get them the points they needed to jump up. But my final one, actually, we're going to go back to FCC. My biggest loss here, and it was something that was pointed out to me by our friend Coach Goff in Cincy Talk. It's actually the other side of Barreal. It's Santiago Arias.
Oh yeah, he left.
A huge part of this FCC side that won their first Supporter Shield last year, but provided a ton in the attack, a ton of good service from wide areas, but also very, very strong defensively. Fit that wingback role really, really well, and is somebody who has not fully been replaced yet. There are other rumors that they might bring in some right wingers who can play into that same spot. Another Argentinian, youth player that might be a big addition, but you can't replace. You can turn a defender into a wingback attacker, but it's very, very difficult to turn an attacker into a wingback defender. Not very many people have been successful with it. Not impossible, but I think that if you see a weak point in Cincinnati's game this year, it will be on that right side because Arias isn't there.
I agree. I think Cincy have been weakened by the loss of Vasquez, by the loss of their 2 wingbacks, really. Like they might be able to recover from that, but it does look like their starting 11 is not as strong as last year. I definitely had Vasquez up there on my list. I had Miles Robinson as well up there on my list. I think probably for me, Miles Robinson is the biggest miss. I think Atlanta's they're not good defensively. And I think that's one that he was their best defender, arguably. So have they replaced him? I think not. And I think that team potentially could be open for even more goals next year, having lost, obviously, their best center back. Yeah. And I also think he had a certain amount of, sort of importance to that team, both culturally as well. I think that they're going to miss him in the locker room as well as on the field. But I'm excited to see what he can do in Cincinnati and finally not have to play on turf. Maybe that'll save him from getting injured all the time.
They're putting Atlanta all eggs in the basket of Luis Abraham. And I mean, he had a slump in Mexico playing for Cruz Azul. And, he did really well in the Peruvian league before reaching out Mexico. We need to see, we need to see the Luis Abraham that made him come into the MLS from Mexico. I don't think Atlanta has seen that yet. He's in the same position in which when Cartagena first came to Orlando, he had a lot to prove. Also for club and country in a way, for him to still be, called up for the Peruvian national team, and he's not delivered. Not even he's a sub in the national team, and he's a sub in Atlanta. So I just think he's definitely going to be a big part of that defense now that Miles not there. They need to see the best version of him. Otherwise, he's just going to be lost in translation, and I think they're going to move on probably with a rookie, in my opinion.
Well, I think they have such a great attack that it would be, they got to sort out that defense like last year.
Yeah.
I'm sure Andrew and Connor, who is an Atlanta fan, knows all about that. He's going to hate this section that we're bad mouthing your defense. Sorry, Connor. All righty, on to the next one. Number 4 on my list here, best offseason transfer window. So which MLS club in the East has had the best offseason? On the MLS Extra Time podcast last year, we were the winners of the offseason. Andrew Wiebe nicknamed Orlando City the winners of the offseason trophy. This year, he's already giving it away to other clubs prematurely, I think, because we've had a pretty good offseason ourselves. But I'm going to go Andrew. Who has had the best offseason? And this is strictly the East. You can't pick Colorado because everybody wants to pick Colorado.
I'll tell you, Colorado wasn't even my pick in the West when we were prepped the West. So that's
I think there's some overhype there on that. Like,
I agree.
It's good. It's not outrageous. I think when you're Colorado, you just slightly make yourself better, and everybody's shocked.
Right. Especially when you have a good friend of ours named Chris Armas over there. You never know what he's going to do to make that team.
Yeah. If the floor is the bottom, then it's not hard to get better. But enough about Colorado.
As much as we would love to. It's a tough pick, right? There were a lot of really good moves this window. Lots of teams doing really, really well. So, like I mentioned, Montreal. I thought Montreal picked up a lot of really good pieces. Chicago, Orlando definitely fits into that category. But for me, and I'll again preface my co-host who's not here, but I'm going to actually give this one to Atlanta. So, instant replacement in Robinson with Gregerson, and I'm assuming that is a like for like. We mentioned Abraham having to step into that second center back role with Morata gone. That's kind of my only weak point there. They improved their center mid drastically with Bartosz Sliz, as we mentioned earlier. But my biggest highlight of this is that they improved their much needed goalkeeper spot with Josh Cohen. I believe Brad Guzan, if I'm remembering my stats correctly, was the worst goalkeeper in the East.
Overpaid too.
And overpaid, yeah. And I think he was the worst goalkeeper in the East on shots saved over expected, or in his case, under expected. So I think he was -5 in that category when, 0 is saving the goals you're supposed to save and letting in the ones you're supposed to let in. -5, he let in basically 5 goals that he should have saved, which is the only other 2 that were worse were Jonathan Bond in LA and Illich in Colorado. So they definitely needed to improve that. They were never going to go anywhere with him. And they've done so. I like this Sliz addition. I think that he is going to unlock a lot of abilities for those front 4 guys, right? The Zonde Silva, the Saba, the Gigi, and then Almada in that front 4. I think having somebody like Sliz behind him to pair with maybe a Muyumba, for example, to have one guy break it up, the second guy picks it up, find that early pass, and then just let him cook, right? You don't need to, there's so much talent in that group. All you needed was that connecting piece, which I think is one of the things they were missing last year. So I think that's a key that's going to unlock a lot. You still got Brooks Lennon on the right-hand side, Caleb Wiley on the left. I mean, it's a super, super strong squad. So really, really think they've had a good, maybe not like the biggest or bringing in the most flashy players, but they hit the spots they needed to and improved them really, really well.
Yeah, it's going to be a shame not watching Brad Guzan be really bad anymore. It's one of my favorite things. I really don't like Brad Guzan. We just loathe him in Orlando. He's the worst. So watching him get knocked out is great. That sounds awesome to me. So I think at Atlanta, for sure, it seems like you said they have fixed their problems that they had. They've definitely got a strong starting 11. I would consider them up there. Interesting that you have them as your best sort of Eastern transfer window. I think for me, honestly, I'm going to go Orlando City on this one.
Yeah,
I think, like you said, your argument for Atlanta, apply that to us. I think Ladero is an upgrade on Mauricio in that number 10 role, who, from what we've seen in preseason, just clicks perfectly with our squad already. And I think, we had a 9 issue kind of last year, right? We played Kara and it didn't really work out. We moved him, and yes, Duncan was good, but the second half of the season, the goals kind of dried up from him. What we've needed for the last 3 years is a really clinical finisher, and we found that I believe in Luis Muriel, and we've got an even better center back in. Really, last year Rodrigo played too many games, so David Bracalo coming in, the same thing I think you could say for Atlanta we have done. So it was hard. I really tried not to be biased on this one. I was like, no, you can't. And then I was like, you know what? I think we have had the best. So I'm going to go with Orlando City as my choice for the best Eastern offseason. Luis, what about you? And don't choose Miami because no way it's them. They're going to offload players.
No. Look, if you don't know anything about the MLS, of course. I mean, I talk to South Americans all the time.
If you're just collecting DPs, then Miami is the winner.
Yeah, the first thing in their mouth is like, oh, well, Miami's better. They already won a championship, because of the Leagues Cup. And I was like, well, either way, it's a lost cause there. There's really nothing I can do. But I agree with John. And I mean, again, I don't want to sound biased. I think Atlanta has done a great job too. They're going to be contenders. Also, I do want to say Chicago with Kellen Acosta. I think he gained a lot by signing him.
Chicago, I think, were a tight second for me.
Yeah, like Chicago to me, like they've, with Kellen Acosta, honing down. Also, then we're talking about the West, but also you have Charlotte signing, Petkovic, and those are good signings. Honestly, I think Orlando City still. I mean, they're exciting players. I mean, obviously, right now we're talking. We have not seen them in an official match, right? We haven't seen David Bracalo yet in an official match, but if everything goes to plan, it is a very depth, solid squad in many areas, with the double pivot still remaining as a core foundation of Orlando City. Now you being able to play maybe with one pivot if you want to be more attack man minded. You can play with Cartagena right in the middle, and then you have on your left you have Lodero. On your right you have it could be Araujo if needed be there. So you have a little bit more versatility. You could play even now with 2 strikers if that's what you want to do. So I think Orlando now has a lot of options, again, on paper, right? Because we're talking about it on paper now.
I mean, Miami has great first 11 on paper.
Correct, but obviously
when you look
right
outside of that, it starts to get a little thin.
Yeah, but preseason, you've seen all the injuries right now.
Oh yeah, they're a whole other thing,
and they don't know what's coming. And now with the salary restrictions, that they all of a sudden I think they forgot. They're like, oh my god, really? They didn't.
Yeah. We got to tell these Brazilian teams don't buy any of their players.
I'm like, what? GAM? We need GAM?
Moving on from the GAM problems of down south, we're going to go on to the worst offseason from the Eastern club this transfer window. I almost felt bad kind of writing this question, but I think it's relevant. I think we need to know who sucks or who's in what I think still going to suck, right? Because a lot of this for me comes down to not fixing your problems, right? We just talked about the best transfer windows of teams that fix their problems. This is definitely teams that have not fixed their problems. Andrew, who had the worst? Like who's done nothing essentially this transfer window, or bad things, just lost players maybe?
I'm assuming I'm not legally allowed to say Orlando here, am I? I'm just kidding.
I mean, you could, but no one would agree with you. So
no, and I wouldn't even agree with myself, really. I think I couldn't even
know you'd be lying.
No, this is the easiest question of the day. TFC won the wooden spoon and made a single incoming transfer that wasn't a super draft pick. I mean, you've got a fractured locker room. You've got DPs who want to leave. You've got you're probably restricted a lot by your cap space and the way that you've built your squad already. But this team was bad last year. They lost a bunch of half decent players and brought nobody in. They're relying on some players who, didn't quite hit it in year one to step up and be better in year two. Um, I just don't see it. There's so much that they needed to do, and they really just sat around and didn't do any of it except for bringing in a new coach. I think they're going to be regretting that one for a long for a long time this season, maybe till next season.
Poor Toronto. Luis, who have you got for this one?
Well, honestly, to me, DC United. The reason why, Brendan's Heinz-Ike, it's gone. It was signed by Austin, and then they signed a Tampa Bay Rowdy. That tells you right there. I'm sorry that I'm going to say this, but when you're tapping to USL, it's. I mean, I know that you see the horses on the field, and when but again, like they're DC United. They're the first one of the first 10 in the MLS, right? So I mean, they've won important things in the league throughout history, and I don't think a Tampa Bay Rowdy is worth their history. Also, they have their preseason was, I guess, done in Saudi Arabia, which it's the weirdest thing. Like, why would you do that and expose your players to flights and probably getting injured and being, I just feel like this United, it's definitely not looking good in my opinion. Now, obviously, I mean, not to be, obviously, Inter Miami too, with the whole preseason fiasco. I think it's bad. It's telling everybody that really knows about the league that, yes, when they click, they could maybe be monsters, but right now they're not looking so well, so especially without Messi. So,
yeah.
But I think DC, in my opinion, I don't think they've.
DC lost more than I realized. I mean, they lost Taxi Fontas in the summer, which is obviously for sure. But they, Juan, Chris Durkin, I'm not saying they're great players, but yeah, I didn't consider that they. Yeah, I think also they need to fix themselves, and it doesn't seem like they've done that.
Yeah,
like we said. For me, Toronto, I'm with Andrew. I thought for sure they were going to offload their bad assets. Honestly, that's what they are. They're bad assets. And I don't think Insigne and Bernardeschi are suddenly going to come alive just because you change coaches. And I just think it needed a full overhaul, and they didn't do anything by the looks of it. And like you said, they've lost players. So Toronto, unless these Italians could suddenly figure out how to play in MLS, it's going to look like they're going to be down there again for the wooden spoon. So next question. This one is really hard. I almost felt bad putting this in there. Which three teams are the top three teams in the bloodbath that is MLS East? I'm going to go first on this one, just because it make it easier for you guys. You're welcome. For me, it's going to be Columbus, Orlando, and then I'm actually going to put my third one. I can't say. I think it's going to be Fort Lauderdale. I think they're going to have enough about them to get in that top three. I don't think they'll win Supporter Shield, but I think they will be enough to be in that top three with us. Luis, let's have you first, buddy.
Look, I'll be honest with you. I think, I think you hit it out of the park when you said Columbus. But I'll do my options. Look, I know people are gonna be like, this guy.
You could pick like 8 different teams to go in this top three. Honestly,
yeah. So I mean, look, I'm gonna go top. I'm gonna go Orlando. Then I'm gonna go Columbus, and then third, I'll probably do. I mean, right now, some of the exciting signings, and you have players like, Tolkien, John Tolkien, defender. I think Red Bulls. I don't sleep on the Red Bulls this year. I think they definitely are gonna make sense. I mean, I'm not trying to kiss Andrew's butt or anything like that in that sense, but I'm just trying to. I mean, they have pretty exciting team, so I don't know if it's gonna make them for third or fourth, but they'll be in the playoffs, in my opinion, for sure. Better than NYCFC. Um, and the third one, oh man, I don't want to say I don't believe Inter is going to be there. I'll say Montreal.
Big
I-
jump
I'll,
up for Montreal.
I'll say no, I'm just kidding. No. So it's going to be tough. I want to say Cincinnati, but I don't know if they're gonna. I don't know if they're gonna make
Really,
it
it should
top
be like
three.
top 6 teams in the East, and that would be a
Yeah.
lot easier. That's why I made it really hard with three. Three out of
So let me
this
go.
bloodbath.
Let me go with Orlando, Columbus, and then let's go for Atlanta United. I think Atlanta. We're probably
Good
going to
shout.
see. Yeah, we're probably going
Giacomakis.
to see Atlanta moving up there. I honestly don't think. I think the schedule for Inter is going to be tough. If they don't fix the situation with the GAM that they need, it's going to be a debacle, and they're going to put a lot of the youth to play. And I think it's going to be a debacle. I think New York will probably be competing for that fourth or fifth. And then, we'll see the Nashvilles, the Cincinnati's right there, Chicago. At that point, I honestly don't see Philly, Toronto, or New York, NYCFC, maybe Montreal. They're fighting for eighth, but I will go for those three. I will go for Orlando, Columbus, and then Atlanta.
Andrew, a really tough question. Top 3. What you got?
Yeah, that's Red Bull wasn't on my list. I'll tell you that. But that I'm all here for it. It's if we can stay out of our own way, we might be able to get up there. That's our problem is we hurt ourselves. But I'm right there with you guys. I've got Orlando and Columbus kind of as my first, 1A, 1B. I don't have them in any order because that's just not happening tonight. Third spot, I think we've listed a lot of good teams, but I think one of the ones that we haven't chatted about is Philly. Philly is a team that you won't hear about them for 3 months, and they'll be in third, and they'll just sit there, and you'll never see anything fancy with them. They don't, Daniel Gazda is going to score 15 pens. You're going to have Carranza have 10 tap-ins. Glesnes is going to hit 2 screamers from 40 yards. Kai Wagner's going to have 25 assists, and you won't hear anything about them because that's just how Philly plays. They like to be the guys who nobody's talking about. They're just going to go about their business, do their thing. They've got a system that, they've returned a lot of good players from that system, if not all of them. They trust the coach. The coach knows what they're doing. They're just a consistent group who will be there. I like Atlanta too. We've talked a little bit about Atlanta there. FCC, I think, is going to take a drop off a little bit, but I think they'll be still strong. I don't see as good of a year out of a club like Nashville or City, like you mentioned. So I think those would be my 3 is Orlando, Columbus, Philly, with Atlanta a close 4.
I like that.
And Inter Miami nowhere near, by the way. I don't. Nobody in Inter Miami is even close to Inter Miami. They are so far away.
Correct.
From
I
hope
agree.
with this team. You've got the people who follow the team closest are like, yeah, this is what we have kind of surmised, at least on the episode we did with them, was they're never going to throw a game away, but they're likely going to go for Leagues Cup, Champions Cup if they're still in it after round 1, Open Cup if they are going to send their full team. They're going to look for trophies versus playoffs. That way they can go ahead and say,
"Oh, we are the kings of Florida."
Yeah, exactly. And they at least this was kind of like a conversation. I won't say this is definitely what they're going to do, but
Probably
this is a conversation we had about it where if you can take, Champions Cup, Leagues Cup, Open Cup, and then on the second, next year in 2025, go playoffs, MLS Cup, you can say, look at what we won in a calendar year, right? One big, 365 days. That might be a way they go about it, but I don't have Inter Miami anywhere near the top 6 even. I think they're fighting for play-ins, but
I understand that. I think it's the messy of it all that I can't. You know what I mean?
yeah.
I'm like,
Oh, sure.
he's so good that. But you're right. I think they will put a lot of effort into Champions League, Leagues Cup before they go for the Supporter Shield is not important to them. I think Orlando will be more consistent. I think we got a deeper squad. Will be more consistent across that whole season. I liked your Philly pick. I think Philly are like the Seattle of the East. They're just gonna be there, and they're gonna be there. They're gonna be hard to beat. They're just going about their business. So I think that
we did Seattle yesterday, and that was literally the phrase I used: "Is you guys are just the Philly of the West." So,
there you go,
right on there.
But back with the other way. I love it. I think Nashville probably a drop off from them.
Yeah, Cincinnati.
It looks like a drop off. Like it's going to be hard for them to maintain that. And then there's a bunch of teams that like need to turn it around. Like Charlotte need to figure it out. Chicago. Yes, you made signings, but you still got to really figure it out.
DC,
exactly. Montreal, same thing. Like yes, lots of good signings. A new system, new coach. We need to know what that's going to look like, etc. But
before Bracala, I was telling, hey, Orlando, open your wallet, get Walker Zimmerman, from
nice.
Nashville.
I wanted Kamal Miller back. That was my one. That would have been nice. Alrighty, moving on. Next question: which team is most likely to win the CCC? So the CONCACAF Champions Cup, not the Champions League, the Champions Cup this year. This can be an East or
Ooh, I think he froze himself. So Champions Cup, right? So Andrew, who would be your final, I guess you want to say, for the Champions Cup, CONCACAF Champions Cup?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I don't love the MLS sides in the cup this year. I think that based on the way qualification works, I'm just not thrilled with the clubs that we got in there. I think the best chance to win is probably Columbus. I think they're the most well-rounded, thoroughly built team. And the problem with that is they're in a really tough side of the bracket. I think Philly's on a positive side of the bracket for them, but there's some sleeper teams in there, Saprissa and Pachuca, that they need to get by, and you can't sleep on those. But if I had to pick like my final 4, just going through there really quickly, I've got Columbus, Monterrey, Club America, and Philly. And then I said, to continue on the MLS theme, I got Columbus and Club America in the finals. And if I'm going to take the homer pick, I'll say Columbus wins the cup. But it's a low percentage for me. I just don't think this is, this is not a year where I'm looking around like, oh, like I feel confident about going. Like when LAFC was in there or Seattle was making that run, like when they got in there, like, oh, they can make, they can be good. Columbus is the only one I feel like might be that team. And I'm just not, I'm just not thrilled with the bracket placement they're in. Like if they were in the bottom right, I think is the preferable location. I think it's like a Central American club, 2 MLS sides, and a low league Liga MX side. Like I think Columbus would have run through the final, no question. But they put Miami and Nashville in that side, I believe. So, yeah, just not thrilled about it. And I'll say that the Crew will win it because MLS is massive everywhere you go, and but I'm just not super hyped about it.
Yeah, I think a lot, like you said, depends on the matchups and who you're playing and who's in sort of your bracket, your corner of the bracket, as it were. Luis, for you, who's winning the Champions League this year?
Well, I mean, it's gonna be tough. I mean, it's a lot of, like you said, a lot of picking and choosing who falls on there. Definitely not a Caribbean team, not a Costa Rican team. I know for a fact. I mean, Club America, to me, it's a really huge contender. I think they are the best team in Mexico right now. And I definitely see them as a potential finalist. Also, I do believe that this year, Orlando will defeat Tigres. And they're going to probably fall to St. Louis. I think it's going to be something weird there, but I just something tells me that this year with the signings, if everything goes well, Orlando can definitely they have a better team than when they faced Tigres last. And Tigres, yes, they're a powerhouse, but they're not looking so good. But I do still believe that definitely they're going to do everything in their power, and hopefully I'm wrong to go through to the later stages. But I have a feeling that this year Club America is going to win it all. I think they're the most complete team. They have the, I mean, when you see him in the poster for the Club World Cup, they're gonna, even people from Asia are gonna be like, "Oh, it's Club America," right? Now, when they definitely what the league wants, and what tells me is what the league wants is Inter Miami, and to do the last dance with Ronaldo in the Club World Cup. That's what the league wants. That's what Don Garber sleeps at night, and dreams, right? But I'm 90% sure that's not gonna happen. There's a higher chance that Orlando beats Tigres and then maybe falls to a St. Louis than that to happen, you know. And I do believe that probably we're gonna have another Mexican champion this year. That's just my opinion, based on some of the competition in the bracket.
I think Miami have a fairly easy run in there. Like they've got a nice part of the bracket, which is great. So I think
Easy.
I think once they come up against like maybe Monterrey or maybe whoever comes from our section into like the
Right.
semis, and they've got a few injuries, they've not got Messi. Maybe I can see that's where they slip up and they just don't have enough about them to get all the way to the end there. But they could also go all the way. I can see that, and I do agree that there might be a little bit of, we always worry here about bit of favoritism going on.
Yeah.
Not that we like to point
Just
fingers,
a
but
little
the
bit.
League's Cup game from last year, I have horrible flashbacks of the reffing at that game. So maybe we'll see a bit of that, maybe to help them. We don't know, but our side is like it's a revenge tour for us. So if we're firing and we're on it, there might be like a passion here that ignites in us. If we can revenge against Tigres, then maybe Columbus go through. We could have revenge against Columbus from knocking us out of MLS like last year. If we hit the ground running, there is definitely a chance that we could go far and hit a semis or maybe even a final. But I'm with you, Luis. I think it's like on that side, America or maybe Pachuca getting all the way through. On the other side, I think they've got an easier route. And then when they get to the final,
being realistic. You're being realistic.
Honestly,
John,
realistically, if you look at the
do.
stats, very few MLS teams win Champions League. I'll be delighted if we get to the Champions League semifinal or final. Honestly, I think that would be an incredible experience. But if we can get to the final, an MLS team could win it. But history tells us that it's not likely. You got to be one of the best teams, like it could be Columbus. You got to be the best team in MLS, and you've got to start the season. As we all know with Champions League, it suits the League MX teams more because they're in their season, whereas we're so early that it doesn't really suit us, and that always puts a disadvantage against the MLS teams.
In the market, Inter, Columbus, obviously they sell. Obviously, the better team, Columbus, in my opinion. Maybe a St. Louis with a thriving team, thriving fan base. It would be great to see them up there too. But, obviously, like you said, I think this is the year that we could definitely do it. I just don't know if we'll go all the way, but I will laugh. I will LMAO, okay? If Orlando makes it to the Club World Cup, I will, man, that'd be hilarious. You imagine a small little team in Orlando, going against like Al Hilal, Urawa Reds, you know what I mean? Like you imagine that? Like that'd be so huge. That'll be like you said, John. It will be massive. Orlando would be
Massive for us. Yeah, we dream of those days. So, and just the fact that we are in the Champions League is incredible to me. So, us going on a run would be an amazing scene to see. I think really the tournament though, it's like we said, you've got to start quickly. You got to start early. So it all depends on how we begin this year, but it'll be interesting to see what we prioritize. Like we were talking about Miami prioritizing different competitions. Like what is Columbus going to prioritize? Are they going to prioritize the Champions League? What is, Cincinnati going to prioritize? What are we going to prioritize? What are Philly going to prioritize? Right. So Miami definitely feels like they're going to go after the Champions League. I think Oscar will also give it a good crack. I think there's a serious chip on our shoulder about what happened with Tigres last year. And I think the boys are, even if we just beat them and then get knocked out, that'll be a great Champions League for us. All right, move on to the next question. And our final question of the day, which team is most likely to win the MLS Cup? So not Supporters Shield, but the actual whole thing, the MLS Cup. Let's go for Andrew first on our final question. We got your top three. Is it one of the top three?
This is way tougher. Can we go back to easy ones, like who had a bad transfer window? Because this one's too hard.
It's so hard.
The East is way stronger than the West, I think, at the top, right? And we kind of talked about that, where I wouldn't be shocked if yet again we're seeing like the top 3 or 4 teams in the Supporters Shield standing come from the East, with the top of the West being, 4th, 5th, 6th. That wouldn't shock me this year. So I definitely think that that's a Supporters Shield sort of situation. I know we said we were going to talk about that, but as a Shield truther and a Red Bull fan, I'm legally obligated to talk about the Shield. So,
I'm a Shield truther too. Trust me.
Love it. I don't know if Columbus repeats, but I do think a team in my top 3 or top 4, because I have Atlanta in there as well. But I think that we can go out and say, because I know on our show we talked a little bit about, is Pareja the guy in the playoffs, right? We talked about, is he able to get them past where he's gotten them so far? And I'm going to say this is the year that they do that. I think Orlando can break that drought and win MLS Cup. So I'm gonna throw that out there into the universe and hopefully give some good vibes out to you guys.
See, this is why we brought you on the show. It's just to tell us how good we are. That's awesome. Luis, are you going to pick us, or are you picking someone else for lift this whole thing?
Look, I think everything on paper looks very strong on our side. That we can go toe-to-toe with Columbus, which will be, I think it's the toughest competition in our dark beast, I think, for us. We've had some issues with them last season, and I think this season with the signings, we should go up one or a couple on them throughout the season. So I can make the case that we could definitely aim for that and win the MLS Cup. The West is really it's up and down. I mean, Austin, I think they could do really good. LAFC. They're going with the whole Vela drama happening right now. I think Dallas is a sleeper. Colorado as well. Look, it'll be crazy if Orlando goes to the MLS final against Dallas. I think Oscar will be like probably a couple of tears was shedding down his cheek. But of course, I think Orlando could. I think Orlando could do it. So let's go for it.
I think it's like we talked about it before many times. Oscar is a sort of, he has the ability to put together a cup run. Like he'll put together, like we did for the Open Cup, like we did for MLS's back, and got to the final. It just all depends when we do that. Like this past season, we kind of peaked a little too early. We peaked like late summer, and we were arguably the best team in a period of time there right before the playoffs, and then we dipped sort of before the playoffs. What we need to do if we want to win MLS Cup is really hit that level at the end of the season. So I think longevity wise, we have a really good team. I think depth, we have a really good team. Honestly, I think we're more likely to win the Supporters Shield than we are the MLS Cup this year for us. I think I'm gonna. This is terrible, terrible thing to predict, Luis. You're gonna have to ban me.
No. I mean, I
I
think. I mean,
yeah,
if you think about it, if you win Supporters Shield, in my opinion, you won the league.
right
You
from that
know,
perspective. But I
so I
think that,
mean, just
like
for
we
people that are
said,
not
there's
like,
a team down south that's gonna prioritize certain periods of the year. Like they'll just happily get into playoffs, but I would almost see them like saving guys like Messi to play in the playoffs and not like resting them at certain periods of the season just so they could get in that final,
but they've proven based on preseason that the bench is really not that great.
It's not, but if
I
if
mean,
you've got them all on the pitch at one time
yeah, and especially if
with
they're gonna
arguably
lose
the best
four
player.
players potentially,
Yeah.
like that's like,
I know.
who you're gonna
I
play
know.
the
I think
the
I
the
think for me
utility
they
kit
they
guy,
are up there if they're going to be
the
hot
kit
at the end
guy.
of the year. But honestly, I think it's going to be Columbus again who wins MLS Cup. And my reason for that being, I just think Wilfred Nancy is a next level coach in this league, and I think that the way they play, they've got that sort of mentality of the next man up, and if they drop guys, they have other guys to come in and do the same role.
Yeah,
And I think this year they show in the cup that they're an all-out attack team, and it's sort of like we will score 3 or 4 and you need to score or stop us, or you need to score more than us. Like that Atlanta game against them and like our game, like if you're not clinical, Nancy will score 2 or 3 because they are clinical and they are that attacking. So I really rate him as a team. I think they've retained pretty much everybody, if not like, added a few pieces here or there. They lost, obviously, their great center back. But overall, I think it's just a really, really good team. And I think he will coach them to be as good as they were last year. And for me, I think that's why, weirdly, I'm going to go for Columbus to get it again. I think Orlando will be in the mix. I think for us, it just depends on when we hit our stride. If we hit our stride at the end of the year, definitely I'd pick us. But I go by coach when it comes to MLS Cup. And I think Wilfred Nancy is the best coach in the league and will continue to be the best coach in the league.
I agree. This is great.
Well, that was a very big episode, big deep dive there for us, talking all about the East. We want to thank Andrew for coming on and giving us his knowledge that he's been accruing over the last 2 weeks. Andrew, go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you, and go ahead and tell them where to watch all of your deep dives.
Yeah. First off, I want to thank you guys for having me on. This was a ton of fun. Really loved diving in with you guys on the East. It was a ton of fun. If you guys are new and you don't know who I am, you can search the Designated Players and MLS podcast pretty much anywhere you get your podcast. That's where we all are. We're on all the social medias: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. I mean, we're pushing for 300 on YouTube by sometime relatively soon. We're at 291 right now, so trying to clean that up and get to that maybe before the season starts. It might be a little short notice, but maybe before the end of or beginning of March. That'd be a good goal. But yeah, we're most active on YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter. So if you want to go interact with us there, we're there. If you don't know what we do, basically, we're a general MLS podcast. It's me and my buddy Connor. We sit there and we talk about all the big news that comes out in MLS in the present day. We have a whole series regarding MLS history. So all of fan-chosen history segments from the start of the league all the way up to the end of last season. So we've gone through 50 of those already. And we love doing those. They're tons and tons of fun. And then, our biggest thing that we're doing this season is not so deep dives. So one guest from every single MLS podcast or team who's going to come on and let us know about their team in depth and get a good inside preview of their team for the 2024 season. So if you're interested in any of that, come give us a follow, come hang out with us, because we like to have some fun. We just like to laugh and joke and have some good time. We do MLS games too, tic-tac-toes and trivias and stuff. So, all that stuff. It's very, very low key, very, very casual. We're not a professional podcast. Just have some fun with it. So, appreciate you guys for having me on again, and hope we can do this again soon. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've been listening to all your episodes, so it's really helped me. I know understand more about the year because as we go on, we're gonna have to play these teams, and so it helps me understand better what they're doing and the off moves, and I think it's really informative. So I encourage everybody to go ahead and get some extra content there. Listen, maybe just listen to the Atlanta one or the Miami one, or
Yeah, the Miami one.
pick the teams that
Definitely.
you want to
I'll
like
listen
know
to it.
more about this year, and I think it's a
Sure.
great resource. So we thank you, Andrew, for putting that time in. You guys are awesome, and we appreciate what you do. So everybody, go over there, give them a follow, give them a listen. For us, I'm going to say as well, please go ahead and subscribe to us on YouTube for LPO. We're having a real push at the moment to get to 1,000 subscribers. So we're about 720 at the moment. So we're getting there. That's our plan, our next big aim. So go ahead and subscribe on YouTube if you're not, and also click the bell icon for notifications so that when we put out new videos or press conferences or training videos or new LPO podcasts, you guys will be able to know immediately and get those push notifications. So follow Loud and Proud Orlando on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. You can follow me as John Rollins OCSC on X or Twitter. I don't know what to call it anymore, Luis. Where can they find you on X?
You can find me as Pineda_ORL, where I learn how to post GIFs. So I love that.
I love me a GIF.
I
You
also
know
love
that.
to now embed my videos. Look at that.
Ooh.
I'm getting fancier on Twitter. And so, yeah, and you can find us also at LPO_podcast on Twitter as well.
And if you haven't, check out all of our content from the jersey reveal yesterday. We got some
Yeah.
awesome videos up there. There's some incredible stuff that they did at that event that was really, really cool. So go check that out. Finally, I just want to say thank you for everybody to listening and watching. Drop us a like and a follow, like we said, or subscribe. And here, Andrew, every week we like to finish off with our favorite phrase. And we're going to let you say it, even though you're a Red Bull fan. So you could end us off with a nice big Vamos Orlando. We won't tell anybody, but just for right now, you can be an Orlando fan.
All right, y'all. Thanks for listening, and vamos Orlando.